My name is Gordon Boswell, and I'd like to welcome you to the Gordon Boswell Romany Museum, which I run in Spalding in Lincolnshire. I opened the museum in memory of my father. He was born in a rod tent on the sands at South Shore, Blackpool on the 25th of February 1895, and I opened it on the 25th of February 1995. He would have been 100 on that day, although he died in 1977, aged 82. I thought it was appropriate to open it on that day, which we did. And then people asked me, where did I collect all this stuff? Well, I was born in a tent at the side of one of these wagons on the 8th of August 1940. And I think it's kept in my bones ever since, and we was like that until I was 8 years of age, and then we went into the trailer caravans, the modern one, and we progressed on there from then. And I thought, I've always been interested in the past. I've bought and I've sold and restored these wagons, and I thought, and I've gone out and give talks on the way of life. I've travel each year up to the Appleby Horse Fair, which is a journey of 280 miles from Spalding, which takes us 2 weeks. People know I do this. They asked me to give talks on the way of life, and I thought one day if I open a museum with all the exhibits that I've got, all the old wagons, which is, or Vardos. Vardos is a Romany word for caravan, but I like to use the word wagon. Got all these wagons, carts and harness and old photographs, a lot of history to the Boswell family. And I thought one day if I opened a museum they would come and listen to my talk and see what we've got. And this is what I have done. This wagon at the back of me was built for a cousin of mine, Tussie Gray, and it was built by the builder Dave Peters from Longton near Preston, a very good wagon builder of today, and he's still going today. And it was also painted by one of the best wagon painters we've had in the past, called Tom Stevenson of Easington, the colliery in the northeast. Tom died about 4 years ago, but this is a fine example of some of his paint work, showing the gold leaf and the gold gilt, and also the carvings that Dave Peters has carved. One of the biggest questions that I get asked when people come and visit the museum and they look at these wagons, they say, well, how on earth did they bring families up in these wagons, being so small and so tight? Well, you've got to compare these to the average working man's house at the same period. What was houses like? The first wagons was built about 1860. What was houses like in 1860? Or don't go back as far as that, just go back to about 1920 when this one was built. What were they like? There was one up and one down, or two up and two down, no hot water, no flush toilets, no carpets, and they had big families in these houses, 10 and 12 children. Where did they all sleep? Well, as you know as well as I do, there was 4 and 5 kids in one bed, 3 one end and 2 the other end, top and tail. Well, they've done exactly the same in these wagons, but a large Gypsy family, Romany family, would have 2 of these and a tent. They're looking at this bed at the moment, but it's back into a single bed. We pull it out into a double bed, and there is your double bed. So you'd have mum and dad laid on there and probably the youngest baby in with them. And underneath there, there's another bed underneath there for children as well. And if you had a big family, a large family, you'd get another couple laid on the floor, exactly like they did in the houses of that period. And when they got up in the morning, they pushed the bed back to give them a third more floor space. So that is the floor space and the sleeping accommodation in one of these wagons. But as I said, a large family had 2 of these and a tent. Living in a wagon like this, everything had its place and was in its place. It made life work more comfortable for the mother and the children and everything. You've got all drawers here. There's 6 drawers along here. Look, 3 either side. There's 8. There's another cupboard underneath here. There's 2 more drawers there for your kitchen stuff and cupboards. There's cupboards at the side, either side, for your pots and all things like that. And of course, you just say a big family had 2 of these. We've also got a queen stove in here for the heating, to keep nice and warm. You can boil a kettle on there and do a little bit of cooking, but majority of the cooking, 90% of the cooking, was all done outside. on the open fire, but on the really bad days they did do a little bit in here, but that was more to keep the place warm than it was for cooking. They also says they look very dangerous. Did any get a light or a fire? Well, in the past some of them had got a light through a little bit of neglect, because this chimney will get red hot if you're not careful. But in my lifetime I've only heard of about 3 wagons that's been burnt down to the ground through neglect with a stove like this. I've never heard of anyone being burnt and killed in one. Looking at the inside of this wagon, and the outside is decorated, as people say, been painted very, very well, with a lot of gold leaf and a lot of carving. Every person didn't have a wagon to this standard. You're looking at a Rolls Royce with this one, and everyone doesn't have a Rolls Royce today. So every gypsy person didn't have a wagon of this quality. There was a lot cheaper ones. A lot was built by themselves. A lot was built by well-known wagon builders. And the ones that the Romany people built themselves was known as a peg knife wagon, because they used to build it with a peg knife, or carve all the wood with a peg knife. But this is a Rolls Royce of one. Now we'll talk about this wagon. In fact, it looks exactly the same as this one, but it's quite different, because the simple reason is this one here on the right is known as a wagon because it's got a full door in it, and this one is known as an open lot because it has an open doorway. But yet that one has a canvas that clips up round the horseshoe part of that and laces up down the centre, just like a tent, to make that private and watertight. And this one was built by the same person, Dave Peters of Longton, as this one. Really, they are brother and sister. Every year in June, myself and my wife goes with this open lot at the back of me with 2 horses to the Appleby Horse Fair. It takes us 2 weeks to do that journey. So what we do, well, if you went on the main road, it would be 200 miles from Spalding. But if we go the back way, which I do, and across the Yorkshire Dales, it's 280 miles. It takes us 2 weeks to do it. And what we do, we harness up the horses in the morning and have 3 hours driving. And in 3 hours we know we've covered between 10 and 15 miles. We'll then stop and have 3 or 4 hours rest to rest the horses, feed them, and ourselves as well. And in the long summer evenings we'll have another couple of hours driving after tea. That way we know we've covered about 25 miles in a day.
Appleby. In the year 2000 we've made it all the way from Spalding.
At the back of every wagon there's what we know as a pan box or kettle box, which is a box at the back which is made to keep the ladies' pots and pans in for the fire. You can see the carved horses' heads and horseshoe on there. The painter's name Tom Stevenson. And as you come further up, we then come to a rack that some people who doesn't know a lot about the wagons thinks this is an A rack, but it's actually known as a cratch, the cratch. And that is to put the steps in there when you're travelling and anything else you're carrying. It acts as the car boot. And then in the evening time you can put your harness in there and anything else you're carrying. This canvas then comes down to make everything watertight, and just like a car boot that works as. That's known as the cratch. And then if you go further up, you see the window at the back which opens, and then there's a lovely pair of shutters that goes across, the old-fashioned shutters that houses used to have, and they close up if you want them closed up, and they open in the daytime. It's a lovely feature at the back. And as you go further up, right at the top of the wagon there's another carving, and then right at the top there's the Prince of Wales feathers and a horseshoe, which is very, very effective and very nice. This wagon is built with some very nice light springs. Axles, a round carved axle, which is a very nice feature on it. It's got some nice wheels, brass frets, and the brass hubcaps has the builder's name on, D. Peters of Longton. And then as you come to the wheel here, we've got the brake block, which is the brake, and that has even actually got a sunflower carved on there, done in gold leaf. As you come further up, some people call these butterflies, some people, the proper word for them is chamfered. So that's chamfered out while it's being made, and then it is filled in with gold leaf or painted with gold leaf. Gold leaf is actually, you buy it in a book, and you paint where you want the gold leaf on with gold size, and wait till it to go tacky, and when it goes tacky you then put the gold leaf on all like that, and it comes off, and then it's varnished over the top. 24 carat gold leaf, and on all these scrolls here is all gold leaf. Everything you see on here which is shiny gold is gold leaf. A good wagon that has been painted, and they say how many books of gold leaf has been put on it. Well, some will say we put 100 on mine, some says I've had 20, and some says I've had 50, but I would have thought if you've got 50 books of gold leaf on a good wagon, it's well decorated with gold leaf. Coming to the front wheel is always about 2 inches smaller than the rear wheel, and that shows you a nice wheel again, the hubcap on the fret, and also a nice shaped spring and a lovely shaped lock, as we call, a nice dish lock and lish, meaning it's nice and light and strong, very, very well, beautiful, as I say, very, very pretty to look at, very, very lish little wagon, as we call that. And then you can come here and see these brass corner plates. It's another unusual feature. Some of these is just ordinary cut square, but these have got a little bit of carving on each end. There's one on each corner of it. And then also along the sides we've got these panels with a scrolling, one big one, a small one, a bigger one, a small one, and another big one with your initials in the middle. And then we've got this lining. We call this white lining here is all done by freehand. This wheel is a very important wheel. It's actually the brake wheel for when you're going down a hill. When you're going down a hill, if you're a steep hill, you don't want the wagon to push on the back of your horse, so you wind it on and it comes on the back wheel like that. And when you're going on the straight and you're finished down the hill, off again. But that's the brake wheel, works the brake. There's at the top here there's a bar where the steps go through, and that just secures the steps, so when you put them up they don't slip down. And then we've got another bar here where the shav's fastened to, so that is where the shav's pulled from. It does all the pulling from there. The colour. There is really only two colours of wagons or Vardos, which is a maroon or a bottle green. Now, the old people used to call this a plum colour, a very dark maroon. So there was a dark maroon, plum colour, or a bottle green colour. Now, them was the two basic colours, and then as time went on, they lightened this. So you may see another wagon with a bit lighter maroon, but there's still the same lines from goldwork, or a bit lighter green. So really, we only had two colours from years ago. But today, people do paint them their own colours, but the original colours was maroon, dark maroon and a very dark green. And this wagon at the back of me is another unusual one, built at Wicks of Wisbech in 1875, a very old one and very unusual. They're known as a kite wagon because when you stand at the front of them and look at them, they're a kite shape. Known as a kite wagon. Large wheels, just like the big Reading wagon. If you look at the back wheel there, it stands 5'3" in height. That's a very tall wagon. These weighed very heavy. They weighed 2.5 tons, and some even weighed a little bit more. But in them days, if they only travelled 3 or 4 miles in a day with a horse, or 1 or 2 horses, that was quite enough. They could stop for another week before they travelled on again, so it didn't hurt the horses in no way whatsoever. But they weighed 2.5 tons, and they had a nickname. If you can imagine going back to 1875 and just after that, the old road was made up of stone. And these was christened because they weighed so much as stone crushers, because if you look at the big thick tyre, steel tyre on the wooden wheel, you imagine that going over a stone, it would crush it. So there was christened stone crushers because they weighed so much, and they used to hear them and feel them coming down the roads. Wicks of Wisbech only made 5. There was well-known trap makers for market carts and farmers' carts, but only made 5 of these wagons, and we don't know it is made in Wicks of Wisbech because we followed it back, and Wicks has got the plans still. One of the grandsons has still got the plans, and they only made 5, and this is one of them. We believe it's the only one surviving made by Wicks of Wisbech. How this one come into my possession? Well, I knew about it, and it was at Godmanchester in a very, very poor state. Godmanchester against Huntingdon, Cambridge, in a very, very poor state at the back of a pub. But I didn't get it from there. Another gentleman got it from there, and he took it back to Holywell in Wales, and he restored it himself with the help of one of these big parks, a theme park. It was then restored by the friends of the theme park, and it was there for about 3 years. And after a while the person died. I got to know about it, and I got it here to come into the museum. It's always nice to come in this wagon because the history of it just more jumps out at you, particularly this stove. This stove is a very unusual one, known as a Colchester stove, made in Colchester by Barnard and Sons of Colchester. I have never seen another one like that. I've heard my father and grandfather talk about them, but I've never seen one until I got this. I've seen sketchings, not even a proper photograph of them. This was known because it stands up very stiff looking. It was known, a nickname for this was like a policeman in the corner on duty, because it was so stiff and everything. But a lovely old stove. I've never seen another one like it, called a coal chest stove, all brass from top to bottom. So that's one feature in here that you won't see in every wagon. And another nice thing is this very large bed. You see, it goes right the way over here. That is a double bed up there. If you took your mattress off your bed at home and put it up there, it would fit, because it's the same size as your double bed. And underneath here, we've got another double bed as well. You put your mattress underneath there, it would also fit as well. So you've got two double beds. Children would go underneath there, as you say, comparing these to the houses of the same period. 4 or 5 children underneath there, the youngest one in with mum and dad, and so that's where they'll be, and some will be left on laid on the floor. A very, very warm wagon, a nice angel paraffin lamp. Everything is spot on and very, very original and very warm. I would have thought something like this was more warm and cosy than the average working man's house of the same period. There's plenty of storage room in a wagon as big as this, and they said because all these seats, there's a locker down there to put all various things in and clothes. There's another cupboard that comes the other opposite side, and a table for the cooking, and there's another large cupboard to the right, to the left of the stove, which is for all your cups and saucers and everything like that. And of course, outside we've got the cratch again at the back and the pan box. But you've got to remember that most of the cooking was all done outside, and a large family would have 2 of these in a tent, so they'd use a big old rod tent as a day room, and also for the boys to sleep in on the night time. This is a very unusual cart. I don't think you'll ever see another one like this. This is one of the few that was built by Bill Wright of Rothwell near Leeds, a very well-known gypsy wagon builder. He used to build 4-wheel ones like this. He built more 4-wheel ones than he did 2-wheel ones. There isn't very, very few of the 4-wheelers left, and I should think this is about the only one of the 2-wheelers left. And known as a Bill Wright's pot cart. And the word pot comes into it. It's another thing that the Romany and Gypsy people used to sell door to door, like they did the pegs and their flowers when they used to go hawking them. So what they used to do, this seat that I'm sat on would come off. They would put a sheath of straw down the centre of these carts, or probably 2 sheaths of straw, and then all the cups and saucers and plates they would place either side the straw, and so it was all on display, and they would lead the horse around the streets selling them, just like they did with pegs and flowers. Now, that was the 2-wheel cart. A very poor success for selling pots off. The 4-wheeler was a good success, but the 2-wheeler wasn't very good at all, for the simple reason was, if you could imagine coming home with half your pots left and you never got them sold all that day, and you took the horse out the shabs and the shabs went on the floor, all the pots would come full into the front and break. So what they done, they fitted the 4 props on it, one on either shaft and one on either corner at the rear to keep it up level, which hopefully it's going to keep up level when we sat on it. But even that wasn't a success, because the children in the long summer evenings had come playing and swinging on these shabs and knock them down and break them. The horses would come rubbing against it and knock them down and get the pots broken again. So what they used to do, as soon as they took the horse out of the shabs, they would pull the cart and push the shabs through a hedge or a 5-barred gate to make certain it didn't tip up and down. So that's why there's only a very few of them made. There's more 4-wheelers made than there were 2. And this is known as a Bill Wright's pot cart, that lovely dished side and these lovely ram's horns, all these carvings. Again, restored by Dave Peters and painted by a person at Blackpool. I'd just like to show you a typical Bill Wright style. lovely small fiddle heads. That's just the shape of a fiddle head. If you were playing a fiddle, that is the shape of a fiddle head. Beautiful, nice and small and gold leafed as well. And chamfered on the round, which is unusual to find, and to get a craftsman to do that is very rare today. The same here, and as you come further down, we've got some little pieces we call ram's horns, and then on the corner again, to the average eye, people think they're springs, but they're actually carved out of wood, which is a lovely feature. You've got some more fiddle heads here, some nice chamfering again, all in gold leaf, lovely and fine, and spindles couldn't be any better. And as you come along, we've got more ram's horns, more spindles, and then more carved springs, if you want to put it that way. And then we come to the ram's horns, which looks just like a ram's head. Very fine, tapered, beautiful. It would do everyone good just to run the hand along there, just to feel the quality that you can't get today. It's a beautiful feature and a beautiful thing. And then if we just go a little bit further along towards the shafts, a typical Bill Wright style of shaft with this type of feature in it, and even more fiddle heads here, and the trace hooks underneath here, and we go along to a lovely shaped pair of shafts where a horse can't get rubbed in no way whatsoever. And then we've got a nice unusual feature here. I've got my name on here on a belt with a horseshoe, but when you lift the lid, that is actually known as a whip box. So when you're done on a night and you're finished, you take your horse out of harness, your whip is there for the next day. It keeps it nice and straight and level. Just a beautiful thing. And all this lovely smooth carve which features it all the way around. And a lovely seat on it, of course. Then we go on to the springs. You can see the lovely, nice, neat, fine springs on this one. Lovely iron-tired wheel. Lovely shaped spokes as well. Every spoke hasn't got this type of shape. It's very, very nice. We've got the nice brass fret and the hubcap that says everything. Bill Wright of Rothwell near Leeds, the maker. A lovely old cart somewhere about 1905. I'll just talk a little bit about these models that we've got. Well, this model is actually of my own wagon here that go to Appleby. Peter Jones, some people who has some china shops, he's got 7 about in Yorkshire. A person called Peter Jones asked me if we could do some modelling and for these wagons, and Board of Fine Arts, they actually model them. So this is actually a horse that I've got called Sylvester. And this one is called Rosie. This one is due to have a foal in about 2 weeks' time, and this is on the way to Appleby, going to Appleby. It's got a little signpost here, Appleby 8 miles, Penrith 12. The dog that we've got called Gypsy, these is modelled off myself, and these is of my son when he was a small boy, and my 2 daughters and my wife. That is a beautiful piece. They made 600 of them, limited editions, and they've all been sold and all in collectors' hands, and this is number 1. Just talking about this one, following the success of the first model of the wagons, Peter Jones again approached me and the rest of the guild that he belongs to make another one, which is this one here. This is having a deal for a new horse at Appleby Horse Fair. So there's myself with another person who's come up with a horse, and I'm just buying the horse off him, which I have got. Again, it shows you the same 2 horses, the one that was in the shabs of the other one and the one that was tied at the back. So we've got Sylvester and Rosie, and this we call Jet. We've got the dog once again. My wife sat on the steps, my boy, one of my daughters and another daughter on the front of the wagon, and even some chickens in a chicken coop underneath. This is a very good example of the wagon at the back of me. After these 2 models came out, there's a 3rd one will be on the go this October, and after that there's going to be a fourth one. But I feel at the present time very honoured to be asked to model my wagons and horses and myself and family. It's a bit of history that will be here when me and my family is no longer here. People, it will turn up on the Antiques Roadshow at some time, no doubt, in the future. That's the grinding barrow, known as the scyther grinder, knife grinder or grinding barrow. This is one of three types. This one they pushed round the streets to sharpen people's knives, scythers and even edge sharpeners and lawnmowers. And there's been many a pair of scythers ruined by a person who doesn't know what he's doing. He thinks they're sharpening them, but they're worse than when they started. This one, the wheel is about 140 years old, and my father in 1950 restored it and made all this new piece around it. So it's 50 years old, the outside is, and the wheel is about 130 years old. Just a museum piece now. When people do come to the museum, nearly always they say, "What is it?" And as soon as I get on it and pull the knife out and to start to sharpen it, then, "Oh, I remember that, I remember that." Well, it always causes a laugh, and we let some ladies get in here and have a go, and they can't either go backwards nor forwards with it, so it causes a laugh. But it's a lot of interest, and it brings back a lot of memories for people to see something like this. But of course now, we've got sliced loaves of bread, haven't we, and sharp knives and electric knives, and there's no work for the gypsy man. But this was his way of keeping his family, putting bread on the table, was pushing the grinding barrow out, and his wife selling flowers at the door and pegs and telling fortunes. This was their main source of income, was the grinding barrow. Kept many a family in good condition and nice and warm. This is another big old heavy wagon as well, very similar to that. Well, it is a kite wagon, built the same way, just the shape of a kite, built very much the same as Wicks, but it isn't a Wicks, it's one that's built in Cambridgeshire. Very, very heavy again, weighs 2.5 tons. I've had it 7 or 8 years. It's been slightly restored by the time I got it, and I've done a little bit to the inside, but it wants the wheels doing on this one. They've got quite a bit of woodworm in them, but the rest of it is all sound. And then this one here, I've got quite a soft spot for this one. This is a wagon that my father built when he was 70 years of age, and he built it from scratch. Well, when I say from scratch, actually the cart at the bottom, the wheels and the cart, he didn't build that. That was built on a strawberry dray who would take the Wisbech strawberry dray. That's when they used to take the strawberries to the station to be taken to the markets. It was a little bit dished to keep the strawberries nice and packed tight. He built it on there. He built it all himself, all the bows and everything like that, put the inside in, and he even painted it and gold leafed it. And that is one that I've got a bit of, well, obviously a bit of space in your heart for. And this is one that the models that I was talking about, they're going to build and make another model of this one, which is very, very nice, as my father built it. And then as we go on to another one, which has got another story to it, we call this the Haunted Wagon. And it's known as the Haunted Wagon because a lady had it, and she had it in her garden. She built it off, bought it off some gypsy people, and she wanted it for her to write her books and things in her garden. And she's got quite old and didn't use it any longer. And I went to see if she would sell it, and she was a little bit didn't know what to do or not. But when I said I've got a museum and I would like to put it in the museum, and she said I would think about it. So she thought, and about 3 weeks went by, and she gave me a phone call, and she said, Mr. Boswell, she said, about the wagon or the caravan you was interested in, she said I would let you have it, or I would sell it to you if we could come to some agreement on the price. But the only thing that I'm concerned about, would you have the little girl that goes with it? I thought, little girl that goes with it, is it $1, something like that? But she said, actually, a little girl plays on these steps every day, comes out once a day and plays on the steps. In other words, she said it's haunted. I said I wouldn't mind the little girl, and if it is haunted, it's just something to be able to go into the museum, and it's come back to its own people again. It's come back to the Romany people. So this is known as the Haunted Wagon by a little girl. But she won't hurt you. I've seen her, and I hope someone else will see her as well. It's the Haunted Wagon. This is another wagon with a bit of history to it as well. I'm not saying it's haunted, but it may be, I don't know. But this one I bought a number of years ago, quite a number of years ago, near London. It was in a very big garden, house and grounds, and the people who I bought it off bought it off some gypsy people in 1952, when them gypsy people first got out of these type of things into the modern trailer caravan of that period. They bought it, not for a lot of money, and they used it in their house and in their grounds of their house for a Wendy house for their children to play in. So with it being stood, I bought it off them, and with it being stood, the wheels went a bit rotten, being on the grass. I've had them all refellied, as we call it, and repaired, and now we're going to get into it and get it restored properly. But that was built in Chertsey in London about 1910, and that cost in 1910 £310. That was the price of 3 terraced houses in 1910. A lot of people may think that this is a Reading wagon. It looks like a Reading wagon, but it's not. It's actually a Burton wagon, and the way we can tell the difference between a Burton wagon and a Reading wagon is by the back wheels. The back wheels of a Reading wagon runs right the way up the side, 5 feet 3 inches tall. A Burton wagon, all 4 wheels run underneath. There is the difference between a Burton wagon and a Reading. This one was actually built in Chertsey, and it's known as a Chertsey wagon near London. And then we'll just go to this cart that we've got this side of me. This is a well-known gypsy cart known as a Bradford flat cart, because it was built in Bradford. A Bradford style, nice little wheels, nice swan neck springs, as we can see, and that's a beautiful style of Bradford cart. And that painting on there, I was going to paint it and put my own name on it. At the moment on the back it's got someone else's name on, but I was going to paint it all out and get it all done up with my own colours and my own name on it. But the person who painted that was a well-known gypsy painter called Jimmy Berry, and he is now passed on a number of years ago, and I thought it's a pity to paint Jimmy Berry's work over, so we're leaving it as it is. It'll be in the museum for further generations to come and see. Anyway, what I'm going to show you now, we're coming from the old horse-drawn ones to some of the very good trailer caravans. This one here was built in Penrith, known as a Westmoreland Star, and if you look at the windows, all the glass is cut into stars. That means Westmoreland Star. And if you look at the badge here, it's got Westmoreland Star on here. These was very, very quality trailers. The best that was built for the Gypsy people. Eccles was built a very good one, but there's none of them left now, or very, very few, the old four-wheel Eccles trailer, but the Gypsy people then come on to this one. Everywhere you look on this trailer is quality, it jumps out at you. It's like a Rolls Royce of the trailers of this period. These, they was that expensive, only a few Gypsy people could afford them, and if you could afford these when these were built in the 60s, you were sort of a millionaire of that day. These got to their peak. The cost of them for every foot was £1,000. So you had a 20-foot trailer, it cost £20,000 in the 60s, and that was the cost of 3 houses. But mind you, every Gypsy man or Romany man couldn't afford one, only the few had them. Same as people as Rolls Royces today. There's only a handful of people as Rolls Royces, and only a handful of Gypsy people and Romany people had these, but they were the best. When people talk about this type of trailer, straight away they say, oh, the showman had them built. The showman didn't have them built. They were built specially for the Gypsies and the Romany people. After the Gypsy and Romany people finish with them, because these weigh 3 or even 3.5 tons, and it takes a very good truck to pull one, and in them days a 7.5 ton TK Bedford was pulling these. But when the operator's licenses come into law, and the Gypsy people and Romany people couldn't get an operator's license for their lorries because they had no fixed address, they was getting pulled up and being summoned pulling these heavy things on the road. A transit van wouldn't pull this because of the weight of them. They weigh 3.5 tons, way above the weight limit for a transit van. So then when they were disregarded by the Romany and Gypsy people, then that is when the show people bought them, because they had the big lorries to be able to pull them with, and they was well within the law. But people now associate these with the show people, but originally they was built precisely for the Romany people. You won't see many of these on the road today. The only place to see them is if you go to Appleby Horse Fair in June in Cumbria. And you'll see a handful of these being used by the Romany ladies who's reading your hand and telling fortunes. There's no way that we can do this trailer justice being so tight in the museum. We're a bit tight for room. But this is another very special one made by Vickers of Morecambe, known as a Vickers trailer or a Morecambe trailer. Again, this was £1,000 a foot and plus, and they really went over the top with these. They put a lot of beading on them, a lot of stainless steel and a lot of cut glass, and when we go inside and show you, you'll really sit you back in your seat. Well, now we're inside this trailer, I should just tell you a little bit about it, how the quality jumps out at you again. Just look at it, all these cut glass mirrors, baskets of flowers all cut, all in the mirrors, all in the cupboards as well, the china cupboards, in the windows. We've got baskets of flowers cut in the windows all the way around. You can't look anywhere without seeing a mirror and cut glass. Even the studs that holds the mirrors to the wall, the screws, has got cut glass on top of them. Everything is marvellous. Everything is built on the curve, on the round. Pelmets, you've got glass, cut glass, not just glass pelmets, but cut glass pelmets. It's really something special, and this seat here pulls out into a double bed. The best of quality. This is what they had all them years ago, and now you can see when I said it was £1,000 a foot to be built. The stove, it's got a solid fuel stove that used to burn anthracite and coke. Above the fire we've got another cut glass mirror and three side panels and a wardrobe from top to bottom, a big long wardrobe. And as you go further to the end of the trailer, we've got the kitchen on that end, all formica top, cut glass wherever you see it, everywhere around. And then you come to these beautiful big lights, electric lights. In them days they would keep a generator to light these up. It was just like a palace. And can you imagine this? Being on a fair somewhere like Appleby, the generator running on all these lights and the blinds up and showing all this glass off and all the Crown Derby that would be in these and Royal Worcester that would be in these cupboards. It was really a showpiece. It done everyone good to see it. The type of lady that would have to keep this clean, she was dedicated to her family and her home. Can you imagine the polishing, the cleaning that the ladies had to do in the days when these was about? Well, the people who had these, they would have two of these, two trailers. They'd have this one, the best of quality, and then a cheaper one to use as a kitchen. They never use these kitchens or gas stoves. This gas stove, this is over 35 years old, and the gas stove has never been lit in it, and the oven never been used. Because they never used to cook in these. They would cook outside on the old-fashioned fire still, or they had a cheaper caravan or trailer to do all the kitchen work in, and this was kept just like a palace. In other words, it was known as a palace on wheels, which you can see it is. Today they don't make anything like this today. They make one called a Roma trailer, half the weight and half the quality of these. God knows how much this would cost today. This cost 21,500 in the late 60s. How much would it cost today? I don't think there's many people could afford to pay for one, and I don't think you'd get a firm that would make you one, because everything is hand-built with it. This trailer come into my museum because a person who had it was called Degger, a horse dealer from Peterborough, and he had it. He had it from being a year old. He bought it when it was a year old, and he then come to settle in Peterborough in a chalet, and this was at the side of his chalet, and he never went into it for 13 years. The door was just closed on it. It was just used. He wouldn't part with it. I tried to buy it off him while he was alive. He died, and then I got it off his widow, and I'm very, very pleased it's in my museum today for everyone to come and see. Appleby Fair and my family, well, it goes back quite a few generations, My grandfather was there, my father and I have been there, and I've been with my grandfather and father, so I know a lot about it. Know when it was on the road. Today people think Appleby Fair has always been on the hill, but years ago when it first started, it was in the town, on the sands at the side of the river. That's where it originally started. But even in them days, that was way before my grandparents' time. It got too big for the town, and it went out about 1.5 miles out the town on the Long Martin Road. And we all used to stop with horses and wagons and trailers, everything like that. And all the horse fair used to happen on the road there. And it was for Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday. You was allowed to go on there, pull on the Thursday, and you had to pull off by 12 o'clock the following Thursday. And then as time went on, they wanted to stop Appleby because it was a sort of got bigger and bigger, and it was a road problem, and they wanted to bring the new bypass through, and they thought they were going to stop it. But it come into 1964, and they was turning the trailers away and the horses and wagons away, and telling them to go back, because there was no fair. But when my father arrived, he told the council and the police force, the Edinburgh Council, that they couldn't stop the fair because it was a chartered fair. So at that point they wanted to produce a charter, and Captain Lowther from Ackthorpe, the Lord Lonsdale estate, produced the charter, and it went ahead. So my father saved Appleby Fair as far back as in 1964. Between 64 and 65, my father had a lot of to-ing and fro-ing to Appleby to meet the council about the fair, and that is when, in 1965, they come up with a compromise that the horses were still on the road for the fair, but no trailers and wagons allowed on the road, and all the trailers and wagons had to go on Gallows Hill. And it was called Gallows Hill because they used to hang people there. And there's a little farm next to the hill that is owned by a lady called Dorothy, and it's called Hanging Shore Farm. And at Hanging Shore Farm they used to keep the prisoner there the night before he was on the following morning. It was called Gallows Hill, and this is where we all are now. Appleby Fair has changed over my lifetime quite a bit, a lot in fact, because I can easily talk and remember 50 years ago when it was all on the road and everyone knew everyone. There was no one that went there unless there was Romanies or Gypsy people. There was no non-Gypsy people there at all. They was all frightened to come. But as time has gone on, they've gone on the hill, people has known about Appleby and seen how big it has got and getting, and they've all come to join. Now that isn't a bad thing. Other old fairs such as Brough Hill Fair and Boroughbridge Fair and Topley Fair has all seemed to faded out and gone. But I'm pleased that Appleby has got bigger. It's got more like a Sunday market, but isn't for the best that way. But it's better being a Sunday market and keeping the horses and wagons there. There'll be 1,000 horses every year over the week get there. And I say Appleby Fair to the horse world is like Crufts to the dog world. Only the best gets to Crufts, and only the best gets to Appleby. If ever you'll go, you'll see the best of horses in Appleby. The reason why the Gypsy people and non-Gypsy people and Romany people wash their horses in the River Eden, that's in the centre of Appleby today, and has done for generations, and it's just been a must to be able to wash your horse or to drive in. Well, can you imagine 2 miles outside the town with your horses in the fair and there was no water in the fair? We had to pay for water. Now I've queued up with a water can at the little White House, as we called it. It used to be a dairy in them days, and they used to charge us threepence a can for a can of water, and I've queued up as a child to fetch a can of water back for my mother. So there was no water in the fair until 1965, when they moved it on the hill, on Gallows Hill, and they then put water troughs in the fair for the horses to drink. You had a choice in them days. You either bought the water at threepence a can for drinking water, and horses drinking water as well. You had a choice of that, or they walked them down to the river. Well, they didn't walk them, they drove them in herds down the river. The one man would be leading one, and be 20 or 30 horses at the back of it would follow, just like you see or used to see a herd of cows on the road, and they would go into the river all to drink. And of course, as they was drinking, they would the owners would say, well, wash that bit of muck off that one, clean that one's legs, and eventually it come to a bath day as well as to water them, sort of thing. But now, for this past 30 years, I suppose, they go down there as if it's tradition to have to wash your horse in the River Eden. Well, it is tradition, but now they use fairy liquid galore to wash the horses, so they come in very, very clean. Appleby Fair started off with the old horse-drawn Romany Vardo. They used to travel from all over the country to Appleby Horse Fair. But then as time went on, it wasn't long, just after the Second World War, where motor cars come in, and every then one was getting rid of their old wagons and getting a motorised vehicle or big car to pull a trailer, and he only would pull trailers at 20 mile an hour in them days. It was very, very slow. So they all got modernised, and they then progressed on. It wasn't until probably the middle 60s where the horse-drawn vehicles really died out completely, and you would go to Appleby in the latter of the 60s and you would have a job to find a half a dozen wagons. It was all trailers, but plenty of horses. Still 1,000 horses would get there, but there was all brought by horse boxes. And then in this past 20 years, people have started to make that pilgrimage again. I started 20 years ago, said I would like to go to Appleby from Spalding, and I've started going from Appleby to Spalding each year. It takes me 2 weeks to do that journey, so it's a sort of a pilgrimage. I started 20 years ago, and since then there's a lot more people started now, and I suppose if we really reckoned it up, there's probably more wagons and horses going to Appleby now than there were in the days when they had nothing else but horses and wagons. The road to Long Martin, the fair week, it's actually closed off from 8 o'clock in the morning till 6 in the evening for vehicles, and just open to the horse-drawn vehicles, horses and horse-drawn vehicles. So it's nothing else for horses for 3 days, Monday, Tuesday and Wednesday, and them 3 days can be very, very dangerous for the public who hasn't been to Appleby Fair before and doesn't know the routine. They've got horses, trotting horses, going full belt, if you want to put it that way, doing as much as 30 miles an hour in harness, and when they shout, people shout from the oi, 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 oi. You hear that, you want to get out the way, because that's just like someone pressing a hooter on a car. You're going to get run over, so you step well back on the sides of the roads. Never get close, and don't go into the middle of the road with a camera to take a camera. Get a high spot somewhere else, otherwise it is a possibility you could finish up in hospital. It's a dangerous time, but saying all that, stick by the rules and get a bit of common sense, you'll be perfect. You go to Appleby, you come and see and enjoy and smell and the horses and see them. It's something that you'll never see anywhere else in the world. It's Appleby Fair. Come on.
I've got me dogs and me fellas too. I have them in my keeping to catch bonny hares all in the night while the gamekeepers lie sleeping. As me and me dogs went out one night to view our habitation, up jumps a hare and the way she runs right into my plantation. She kicks up her heels and she shouts out "Aunt" till something stops her running. Says I, pretty boss, just you lie quite still, for your uncle he is coming. I picks her up and I cracks her neck and took out my knife for to punch her. She proved for to be one of the female kind. I thinks myself lucky to find her. as me and the dogs had gone half a mile no further, up jumps another and away she did run, and the dogs under her cries murder. I took them to a neighbour's house. I asked them what they'd give me. They said that they'd give me a crown a brace, and could I bring another 50?
We're now going to put the harness on this horse. And the Gypsy word for putting the harness on, we're going to yoke up, put the harness on and yoke it up into the wagon. So I'll just show you how we put the harness on. This is the collar. This is what goes on the horse first. It goes around his neck and that's where he pulls the wagon from. Collar and aims. First of all, we put the collar on upside down, like that. And it goes over his ears, it clears his ears. If we put it on the other way around, it wouldn't go over his head. So when we get it over his head, we then turn the collar round. And you push it back down, and it's in its working position. So we always put the collar on first. The next thing we come to is the bridle. If we put the bridle on first, the collar wouldn't go over the bridle. So we put the bridle on second. Sometimes people will take an halter off and just use the bridle, but when you're pulling a wagon and you want a little bit more control, or you want to tie your horse up, we leave a nice light thin halter underneath. What we've got here is the bit that goes in the horse's mouth. You open his mouth and threadle it through his teeth and make certain it goes over his tongue, like so. You then get hold of the top of his topping, as we call it, and make certain his ears fit through there and there. Very comfortable, as long as he's working comfortable. And we do this strap up, which is called a chin strap, to stop him from shaking the bridle off, because some horses, if they shake their head, they will fling the bridle on the floor. And then we do the chin strap up. So now you've got your horse under control, because you've got the bit in his mouth and he's under control, he won't get away. Whoa boy, whoa. So we put the collar on first, then the bridle. And the next thing comes, we can tie him up at this point and then put the saddle on. And the next thing, we've got this collar on, we've got the bridle, the next thing that comes is the saddle. And we always use this side of the horse because it's what it's been used to, and you always harness one up always on this side. So just throw it over his back and hopefully he won't jump. Sometimes horses will jump because they've something different or cold on the back. And then we come to the crupper, which is this. We undo this crupper with a buckle like that and pick the horse's tail up like this, pull the crupper underneath there, and then we buckle it up back again. Certain that all the air is from underneath his dock and it's fitting nice and comfortable. Then we've got another strap which is called the belly band, which is next to the girth. We do that up slack, just about 1 or 2 holes up there, like that, because if you had it tight it would be too tight, and this is, when you have it slack, it's for the shavs to go through there, and it's to stop the shavs from going up and down. Some people will harness a horse up and put it in harness, then do the belly band up. But it all depends how the shavs fit. If the shavs doesn't fit very good while it's buckled, we'll undo it, put the shavs in and then fasten it back up again. So you have a choice of either to do it up first or second. It all depends how your shavs fit. So that is it. The next thing we do, we put a breeching on it, which acts as a brake. This is what we call the breeching. Sometimes this is put on all together with a saddle and crupper, but I like to put it on separately and take it off separately. It's a lot easier to handle. So we open it out like that and put it over the back of the horse, threadle it through the crupper, strap, and fasten it here, like that. So that's there. Then we lift the horse's tail up and put it over there so he's working comfortable. And this here actually works as a brake when we fasten it to the shafts. And then after this, we then get the reins. and threadle the reins through, and then we're completed. And here's the reins. It's always nice to fold them up when you're finished, just like people would fold a rope up. You know where they are, they're not all tangled up and they're always together. So we have a nice pair of reins, we threadle them out, and this is it. Two ends where the buckles is. Normally I would thread the reins through the tugs, through the eyes on the saddle and the eyes on the collar, and then through, but these reins have got an ivory stop on here, which is for a martingale, so it won't threadle through. Oh. So what we do, we start from the beginning and threadle it that way. That way. It's like going a bit back to front really, but it's because of these ivory stops. And then we've got a buckle here that will buckle to the bit. Here we've got a twisted snaffle bit. A twisted bit is a little bit more secure, or more of a brake for a horse, and we put it single this side and double the other side, like that. So it's single one side and double the other. And why we have it single this side and double the other is because you've got a brake. If you had them both like that, all you'd be pulling is the bridle, but you're pulling the horse's mouth at that rate. I'm now going to put this rein on the other side, put it through the same way, and then we fasten it to the rings on the bit. So we go through the collar first and then the saddle. Pull it back. And then we put it double this side. This way we've got more control over the horse. And this is, as I said earlier on, a twisted snaffle bit, which is a bit more severe to hold the horse back. It gives you a bit more of a brake to pull him up. So there's the two sides and the two reins on. We then, you look at the reins, they're both there, they're all through, and then some people will fasten their reins or buckle them together. There's a buckle at the end of the reins, and some people will buckle together. I've always been taught with my father to leave them apart, because when you're walking with your horse, if they're together and your reins is loose, you can put your leg in or foot in the reins and trip yourself over. So we always leave them loose. It isn't the correct way, but it's a more safer way. And then what we do to fold the reins up, we get them like that, fold them there, push it in that ring, and there is your horse harnessed, ready to walk to the shabs to put him in.
I took them to a neighbour's house. I asked them what they'd give me. They said that they'd give me a crown of rice, and could I bring another 50? Down to a public house and sup myself quite mellow. I shall drink this crown and another one down. Don't you think I'm a trusty fellow? I've got me dogs and ferrets too. I have them in my keeping to catch funny hares all in the night while the gamekeepers lie sleeping. cities, work for a wage. Gold could not buy for me such a cage. Out on the common, beneath the blue sky, who is as free as the Romany ride? Masters I smile at, none call me slave. Riches I have not, none do I crave. Throned in the heather, monarch am I. Who is the king like the Roman?